Hello and welcome to week 11 in behavior management. And here we are, chapter 11. Interesting. Get to that in just a second on token economies. I say interesting because chapter 11 is actually the name of the set of laws that support someone going into bankruptcy. And here we are talking about economies. How weird is that? So, welcome to the world of token economies, probably the most powerful of the individual tools that we have, the most versatile, the most flexible, the most applicable tool that we will talk about in this class. Now, you already have a fairly deep understanding of token economies because you are actively participating in one. The actual economic system of using dollar bills to represent value is a token economy. The actual bills that we have, or checks, or now certainly digital assets that are out there, are symbolic. They're symbolic to a certain amount of value, and that value is determined within the economy that we have, which is fairly somewhat structured, regulated free market economy. The prices of things vary dynamically based on a number of different forces, and the perceived value of that dollar in terms of its purchasing ability, its exchange ability for something that you want, varies over time. We also know that if we engage in certain kinds of behavior within that economy, the economy will reward us with those tokens that we can then use to purchase and exchange for the things that we want. And even, as we'll get to in just a moment, for some, just the possession of those tokens is reinforcing. So I've got a lot of tokens. I've got a lot of dollars saved away that give me security or whatever. That kind of motivation is there too. So even the actual bill itself, which is actually not paper, if you ever want to look that up, it's a form of cloth because paper would disintegrate in your washing machine. Imagine how much money each one of us would be out of. Just remember all the times that you have laundered money legally in your laundry machine. Now, we understand that we act in certain ways. We exchange our time in order to receive these tokens. We evaluate, is the work such, is the number of tokens that I get, the amount of tokens I get, is it worth the work? We're always sort of like, okay, if I'm going to be working 12 hours doing hard labor, is $5 enough? Probably not. We're going to use these same principles to evaluate how we can use a token economy within a classroom or within a home or even just with an individual or even just with yourself in order to provide some flexibility to your behavior plans. Now, ultimately, in this course, you're going to be creating a token economy. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about first the advantages of a token economy. When you have an object such as a dollar or a little plastic spider or check marks on a chart or anything, if you have a little thing like that, poker chips, anything that you can hand out, kind of thing that you have ascribed value to, the reinforcer is portable. You can carry around a whole bunch of those reinforcers, right? And when you want to reward someone, you want to catch them doing something good, just lay out a reward for them. Way easier than, having to provide the actual award. Now, because you're setting up an economy, you also have the ability to have a number of different choices associated, which we just got done. You can have behaviors that have values to them, just like our jobs. Different jobs pay better than others. So if you are giving 10 tokens to vacuum the rug, you know, then, washing the car probably is worth more than 10 tokens. And you can adjust how much those things are worth. And then you can take all the rewards, all the reinforcers, and you can attach prices to them. And the little rewards, those are cheap. The really big rewards, those are much more expensive, just like a real economy. Now, you are in charge of that. You're the person who is manipulating the situation here. You have all these activities that somebody can do to earn tokens, and then you have the store where they can actually cash in there. It's very, very, so it provides an easy ability to give people something of value immediately, even in the situation. They can be right in the middle. Like, say you're in a classroom and they're right in the middle of working with somebody, and they're very helpful to that individual. They help them a lot, and you see that and you walk over and you say, here's a token. Immediate reward right there, and you don't have to disrupt the process by which that person is engaging and learning. People can also learn about saving, saving up for something. They're giving tokens. At the end of the day, let's say everybody can cash in their tokens, and they're looking to have 20 tokens that they've earned so far. There's a bunch of things they can get for 20 tokens, but if they withhold, if they delay that gratification, they can buy the big thing that they want. Maybe it's going to take them all week to get there. What an incredibly good, valuable lesson that is for anybody who's involved in working with children. So, how do you make a token economy? What you do is, first off, you have to come up with some sort of portable token, and it can be anything. I suggest a quick trip over to the dollar store. Go over to one of those aisles that has bags full of things, or even like a party store that has a bunch of party favors. That's a good place to get reinforcers too. Like, some of those things can become reinforcers themselves that they trade in for the tokens. But sometimes if you get a token, they can be just chips, like poker chips. They can be just little dots. They can be actually, when you have a to-do list, that's a form of token every time you click one of those boxes. But we're really looking at a physical token, something you can give to somebody, just like a dollar bill. You can use money. You can actually use money. Just find that old Monopoly game, take all that out, take all that money out, and there are your tokens, with values on them. So you have this this symbolic representing thing that has value. Okay, so the next thing is to create a list of behaviors. They can be standard expectations for behaviors, and every time someone is able to do that for a certain period of time, they get a token, or however many tokens that is. They can be individualized for each person in the room, because for some people, doing certain things may be harder than it is for other people. Therefore, those individuals can earn tokens by doing something that's more difficult for them. Keeping in mind that you can also have tokens and behaviors for your star students, let's say, to push them to the next level. That's one of the a commonly identified problem with behavior management is that the kids that are on behavior management plans in a mixed classroom are getting all the rewards, and you got all these other kids in the classroom that are doing their work and they're doing whatever, and they don't have access to the same sort of benefits. How cool to have an economy in the whole classroom, or with all of your kids, and you can just like you customize that game that you create, you can customize the list of tasks that they need to do to earn rewards, to earn tokens, and you can have values associated with those for each person. So you can have all that. And then you create the exchange. You create the store or the where they can trade in their tokens, they can save up for things, and you have all of those. You set this all up and then turn it on and explain the instructions for each. If you do these activities, you earn tokens to do that. And I'm going to tell you a personal story about this. So many, many years ago, when my children were young, there was another family in town that became homeless. We were friends with them, and the circumstances were bizarre, and they became homeless. It was a grandmother and her two grandchildren. They ended up moving. We had a very large house at that time. They moved in. We took them into our house. So here I have 4 kids, sometimes 6. So there was my 2, there was Katie's 2, and then there were the 2 from this family. So 6 kids living in this house. Great times, frustrating times, all of that stuff, but it was a very, very interesting for quite a few years. We did this. And then very early on, we got the idea that we wanted them to all help with chores. And there was a big house, lots of people living in it. There was lots to do. So I did exactly what we're talking about here. So there was there were lists of different chores. There were each one had different values to them, and whatnot. And the kids were there off and on, families of divorce, but my kids were there every other weekend. Katie's kids were there, but they'd come during the summer. They'd be all there together and stuff like that. So what we did in order to ensure some fairness in terms of the chores is every day, the rule that we went by, every day somebody had to choose 2 chores out of a can. They had little tags that said what they were. They had to randomly pick. So they couldn't always just pick the same chore all the time. They would get 2 chores that they had to do, and then they could do as many others. And we created a lot. There was a lot of individual chores in that can. And each one had a price, and they would earn money, and they would earn tokens, and those tokens were equated with certain kinds of things that they could get. And actually, as I'm thinking about that, I think we actually used real money. We were just like, this is worth 10 cents, this is 25 cents, this is $1.50, that's, and stuff like that. And we just set some money aside for that. Now, what happened surprised everyone. These kids would get up in the morning, they would have breakfast, and they would compete to who could earn the most money that day. These are preteen and teenage kids living in a house, running around, asking us, what can I do? And this went on for a very long time. The place was spotless. It was amazing what we could get them to do for just little bits of money. And then we would go on these, we lived in Madison, we lived in Anson right across the river, but go over to Rennie's, and they could just spend their money as ever they wanted, or whatever. Like, took them to Funtown one time, and they spent a bunch of their money on foolishness there. So it was an incredibly, incredibly powerful way to empower the kids that were living at the house to engage in the activities of maintaining the house. It solidified my fandom of doing token economies. I've incorporated them into my own plans. Sometimes it's not really a need right now to do that. Truth be told, putting that value, and some of you might be able to relate to this, you make a to-do list, and it is, every time you check one of those boxes, it is actually reinforcing. And that is, technically speaking, a token economy. Each one of them is just a little cup of joy that every time you check one off, it is so valuable. Each one of those things is so full of joy, even though they're just small things, that I would bet that many of you, those of you who do lists, and let's say you get up in the day, at some point you're going to sit down and write your to-do list, and you're going to put things on that list that you've already done that day so you can check them off. And that behavior itself tells you how powerful tokens can become. Wealth and greed tells you how powerful tokens can become. Time is money, money is power. All of these things that we have in our regular economy all play out in these token economies that we have. Okay, back to it. The discussion, I want you to identify forces within the economy. This is our public, somewhat managed free market economy here that has modified your behavior. Now, this is many factors. Many factors. The socioeconomic status of your family, the socioeconomic status of people that you know, aspirations, expectations for when you grew up. For example, I grew up in a pretty I'll say light blue color. It was a very blue collar town. My parents happened to be school teachers, so white collar, blue collar. But essentially, the goal that I was always told to achieve was to find a great job. First school I went to when I was an undergraduate was in Southampton, and this was a kind of a ritzy school on the east end of Long Island, and a lot of people that were there were from very, very wealthy families all over the US and the world. And I realized that they had no goal. Many didn't have a goal to have a good job. They weren't going to have a job. I'm not saying this negatively. They were going to own something. They were going to be a boss. They were going to be the CEO. They were going to develop a new company. They were going to do very different aspirations. But the idea of having a job and working for somebody else was not even in their socialization. Those are forces of the economy that affected me and made me different than the peers that I was with. I was there to get a good job. They were there to get the certifications and whatever they needed in order to get funding to start their own business. Very, very different perspective. Maybe some of you have that entrepreneurial blood that's in you. What about have certain careers that are out there that pay at a certain level influenced your choices to go into those careers? I mean, you want to do what you love, but hey, if the money's good too, right? Just do that. So these are all forces of the economy. Or maybe you know someone whose job went away because machines replaced them, or we've shipped things overseas and for cheaper labor, and these forces of the economy change somebody's decisions. I want you to discuss as many of those as possible in the discussion. And of course, we're left at the assignment for Chapter 11, which is to create, it's basically the policy sheet for a token economy. It's going to include, let's take a look at what's in the course book here. It's going to include, we have the title page. You identify the people, behaviors, and the value of the behaviors in the token economy. Identify the actual token economy to be awarded, physical token or a check sheet process. And then you identify what can be bought with the tokens. You create those. And then here are the instructions. The instructions include how the entire process works. So when can they exchange tokens? Where do they save them up? Who tracks what? all of these things. You're writing up basically the policy manual of a token economy. I've already reflected to one person who has been working on their project in this class, telling them that I think that their particular project is worthy of a token economy, even though we're not covering that until now. So this is an incredibly useful way of doing your behavior plans. In addition, one of the cool side effects of having a token economy is it is also, almost by definition, a record keeping system. So if let's say I am wondering about, how well my token economy is working, I can just count how many tokens people are. I don't have to track them. I don't have to, I'm just passing out tokens all over the place. But when it comes, hey, Billy, how many tokens did you earn today? 52, and you can write down and you can see, and it's actually a physical manifestation of the tracking system. So cool in almost all ways. So that's it for this week. That is chapter 11 in behavior management, not chapter 11 in terms of bankruptcy. Thank goodness. All right, so have a great week. This is a really, really fun topic, and I think it's a really fun tool to design and think about how you can creatively, can you even make the tokens themselves reinforcing? That's another ad. They don't have to be. They can just be plain old check marks. They can be little poker chips. They can be very boring. There's actually, I think I have it here. You can buy these on Amazon. Uh, there's a token board, but there's actually all kinds of these here. Let's see if I can find the one that I found before. But look, there's all kinds of check marks, and let's look at the page here. I looked up token system. Let's look up token rewards. You get all kinds of things here. Look at that, all those tokens. You just get those little smiley faces. All that's still loading. There's all kinds of stuff. Look at that. All these tokens you can buy, little jars where they can store them. I mean, if they're selling this stuff on Amazon, it's got to be good, right? So, but you can make those yourself. You can, cut them out of paper, or cut them out of cardboard or something like that. You can do anything, and you don't have to pay money for these things. So, okay, that's it. Have a great week. I'll see you in the discussion boards. I did grade chapter 9 quiz. It was a little late on that one. Now chapter 10 stuff is all done. Thank you for the extra discussion post that people put in there. Appreciate your effort in there. Forgot to delete that from the class. Certainly deleted in the course book. And so that one has some other work I need to grade. So I'll be getting to that this week. Have a great week, and I will see you around. Take care.